Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to the Domesticated Dude podcast. I'm Logan, your host on this journey. Today I'm talking with my friend Ben. Ben and I worked together at the agency and we've stayed in touch ever since I left. We hang out on the weekends, play some cards, drink some beers, and just stay in touch. Ben is a designer, so I wanted to pick his brain about what it's been like in this pandemic, keeping a creative mindset and staying within his creative process. I also wanted to learn about how he and his wife remodeled their entire upper floor of their house as they were moving in. He's got some interesting stories to share about that. And then we also talk about beard envy. It's okay to have beard envy. It's okay to be jealous of guys who may have a better beard than you. If you like what you hear, share us with a friend, give us a review on Apple, follow us on Spotify. You know the drill. Without further ado, here's my conversation with my friend Ben. Hope you enjoy.
Weird times.
It is.
It'll be great. It'll be great to see like all the creative shit that comes out of this though, because I do think, like I said before, like people are coming together, communities are doing stuff, people are gaining awareness of how important it is to have people who do janitorial jobs and serve you McDonald's and stuff like that. Like, hopefully it'll get a little more respect and or living wage for people who have a hard time supporting themselves and their families, which all that money is currently going to like billionaires, which could be split up amongst the serfs a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely an imbalance going on.
Right.
So with all this going on, you're a creative guy. What are some of the things that you're doing to kind of keep your mind sharp? Like, what are some of the things that you're doing around the house or working on creating that kind of gives you that something to look forward to and that sense of purpose?
Well, there's two things that I started at the beginning of the year that were just maybe just goals for the year that I'm continuing to work on. And one is reading. So I want to read one fiction and one nonfiction book a month.
Awesome.
Just to keep kind of my brain entertained in some ways and to learn some stuff on the other side. I'm not a huge fan of reading nonfiction because it's terribly boring to me most of the time. But there are a lot of books that I realized that I was never exposed to in school because I either tested out of having to take certain classes or I just avoided taking any classes that had reading in them. So like there's so many classic novels that I've just never ever read. So I'm trying to catch up on that kind of stuff. And then as far as the nonfiction stuff, I'm trying to read books related to the industry, like somehow related to advertising or marketing or digital media or design or some sort of creative vocation. And so I've been doing better with the fiction. I think I've probably read 6 or 7 fiction books already this year.
Oh, cool.
And I'm barely keeping by the one nonfiction a month. They're just not as much fun to read.
Yeah.
So reading is one thing. From a creative standpoint, I guess I really haven't been doing a ton of like actual production of work, but I've been doing a lot of like conceptual stuff.
Yeah.
Where I don't really know if that makes that much sense, but I've been writing a lot in my notebooks and sketching and doing a bunch of stuff like that. I haven't really been producing. I guess I made a screen print a couple of weeks ago that because I want to get back into my printing habit. So I'm trying to do some more screen printing. I've been doing some experimentation with font creation. I like exploring letter forms and whatnot and patterns.
What goes into creating a new font or a typeface like that? What are some of the things that you have to think about?
Well, the two that I've most recently worked on, one of them was sparked by, I saw this a font online called Solid 70, which is kind of it's definitely a geometric, it's kind of a throwback sort of font where it has like if you imagine the letter O, it would have like a center dot and then another ring around that and another ring around that. It was kind of one of those fonts that has like multiple line strokes per character.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it and I thought, yeah, it's kind of cool, but some of the letters looked really janky to me for some reason. Like they just, the font concept really appealed to me, but certain letters turned me off because I was like, I can't even read what that is. Like in the context of showing me an alphabet, I can decipher that that's an S. But if you showed me that by itself, I would not know that that was an S. So using that as kind of a jumping off point, I went into Illustrator and I started playing around with different, shape thicknesses, I guess would be a way to say it. Like horizontal and vertical lines based on a grid, and then how do circles fit into that grid? And then how can I use those things to connect to each other to create letter forms? So basically what I would do is like stack a grid of horizontal and vertical lines and rings, and then delete out all the parts that didn't make the letter that I wanted it to make, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then that would be the letter.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a drilling down sort of process where you set yourself up with it's not exactly a template, but it's kind of like a starting point where you have rings and you have lines and they intersect because they're all on a grid. And so if you can just like imagine where the spaces should be in the letter, you can just delete the parts that don't shape the letter, and then you end up with a letter. I don't know, it's almost like carving in a weird way.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how that font came together. And I think it actually turned out kind of cool. Like, I'm not the kind of typographer or letter form creator who's going to like do the extended like not weird. Basically I do like uppercase, lowercase, letters, common punctuation, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I don't try to do the whole glyph set for every single possible accented character and all that stuff. Like there's like a lot of those fonts have like 400 different characters in them. And like I just don't have the stamina for that. I don't care enough to go beyond just the basic shit that I might use in a poster or something like that. So it's pretty self-serving. And that's generally why I don't share those font files with anyone. Because they would be like, oh, hey, what about this? I'd be like, yeah, that doesn't exist in this font, you know?
Sorry.
Then they'll be or disappointed. Or that's not why I don't share them. That's why I don't charge anyone for those. Because like, if you're going to charge money for something, it should be a product that actually has like everything you want it to do, right?
Right.
I'm not capable or willing to do that for everyone.
That makes sense.
And then the other font I made, which is not as much fun, was like, I was thinking, okay, this font that I just made is kind of cool. It's based on these multiple lines that intersect, or not intersect, but like work together to create these letter forms. And it's cool. It's got this weird throwback look, and it's modern, but it's also classically modern in a weird way. How could I simplify that even further? So I made another font that was based on not having multiple lines, just having the very fewest shapes possible. So only horizontal and vertical lines and arcs, but no duplicative stuff. And that looks a lot more like something you would like show in like a grade school classroom or something. Like it's very simplified.
Oh, I see what you
like
mean.
an O is a circle, and an A is like an upstroke and the top of a circle and the downstroke and a line. Like they're just so rudimentary that you cannot mistake something for a different letter form. So that's kind of fun. Yeah. And then when I do patterns, which are really addictive to me, and I can lose hours in doing patterns, I just go into Illustrator and I like find a shape, and then I'll play with like rotating it, or most of it comes from rotation or flipping. If you flip a shape and you rotate a shape and then you flip it again, like it has this tessellation, they call it, where you can repeat that thing
Mm.
over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So if you think about the work, if you're familiar with MC Escher, the artist who made like those repeating tile patterns with like reptiles that would like change into birds or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
He used this concept of tessellation to just kind of play tricks on your mind, where he's using the same shapes over and over and over, but he's just like, he would go from like a fish to a bird, and like they're all made of the same part, but over time he would just like morph the way that they're drawn, more or less. And so I got really intrigued by tessellations last year and bought a bunch of books about it. So I try and play with stuff like that. Most of the patterns I do are either based on just simple shapes and colors and or gradients, and then just screwing around with that. I don't know.
That's cool. What sticks out to you about those patterns and things? Is it just the way that things work together to create something? What's going through your mind when you're looking at something like that?
I'm not even really sure. I think a lot of it is kind of meditation, to be honest. Like I can get in a groove where they start with a very simple shape, but when you put them into a different, I don't know, I just think it's really cool. You have something that's very simple, but if you use it in a different way, it's very complicated. I don't know. I was just like playing around with this shit because it's just cool and weird.
Yeah.
And you can do these very complicated looking patterns from like very simple starting points.
Have you always been into patterns and stuff like this, or is this kind of a new kick that you've been on?
I've been working on this kind of stuff for about, let's say, since last summer.
It's just finding new ways to do things, right? Like just finding a new way to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Or even just like exploring what exists that I just don't understand. Like this is just a bunch of triangles, right? But yeah, that's pretty cool. And this is the master shape. But if you put them together in a pattern, like it has this much more complicated outcome. Like I've just been kind of playing around with like different, like we want to do a shell pattern. Oh, that kind of looks kind of cool. I started with these like little tiny blocks. So like this is only a block of 4 rectangles. So there's a white rectangle, a black rectangle, a white rectangle, a black rectangle. And then I would change how they position with each other. And then put them into these bigger blocks and then zoom out more or less. And then you start to see that there's a pattern. And then you start to see that there's a pattern. Like the farther out you zoom, the cooler the pattern becomes. So I started this one, kind of the same premise. You start with this one, you zoom out again, you zoom out again. You start to see these like intricacies. Is that a word?
Intricacies. Yeah.
Things happening where they started from like a really simple like this. Like it's almost like weaving fabric in a way. Like this is a stitch and this is a stitch and this is a stitch and this is a stitch. And if you zoom out far enough, you have like these cool patterns. Yeah, I just find it to be really meditative, really. Like I can lose an hour doing this super easily. Just playing around with like, what does this look like? Oh, what does it look like if I turn it? What does it look like if I turn it again? What does it look like if I turn it again? You know?
So you kind of get into a flow state.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. With those. And it's very relaxing, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So like when I'm super stressed out or I'm kind of trying to come up with a concept for something and I'm not getting anywhere, I kind of use these as kind of like my shower moment things.
Okay.
Like I'll think about this for a little while and I'll be like, oh, yeah, of course. I haven't been thinking about the thing I'm trying to think about, and now it's easier to have an answer or a solution or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of how patterns work for me.
It seems like you are very curious about just everything. That kind of leads me. So. What did you say?
I said I like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that curiosity that, you know, how does this work? Well, how does this work in relation to this other thing? And you kind of need that in your industry because you kind of need to have that understanding of how things work to be able to work for that industry, for that certain client in that industry.
Sure.
But it seems like
there are times when my curiosity and the thing that I'm working on are not really meshing up in the way that I would like them to. like I'm curious about a certain thing, or I'm curious about a certain design style or a concept, and I have to kind of put that aside because like it's not the appropriate thing for that client. So I have to find other ways to serve, because I feel like my design style is not like, you would never look at the, or maybe you would. I don't look at the stuff that I produce for clients as something that I can see my signature on. There are some designers where you can look at their work and be like, oh, that's so and so, like that's obviously their style or whatever. I try and make sure that my whatever I produce for a client is in the style that's most appropriate for them. I'm not putting myself onto them. And so like if I'm super interested in doing like patterns, which I obviously like to, I always try to figure out a way like, can I use this for this client? And more, I've never had an instance where the answer was yes so far. I'm hoping I'll get there. But it just hasn't yet.
But that's good. I mean, that's good though. That's good. That
it would be fun to like bulldoze them and just be like, yeah, you really need patterns because I like patterns. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Like,
right. And then all the work that came out of your office would look exactly the same, and nobody would have a unique visual style, and that defeats the entire point of marketing. So,
right.
I think you're seeing it.
And we've been having some fun recently. I mean, there's a couple things that are coming online right now that I'm really happy about, like the Southwest Minnesota stuff that we did last year that we just got approved. Like, I'm really stoked on how that brand and how the messaging is going to come out. As with any of the small travel clients, it's almost dead in the water right now. Like, I have no idea when it's going to come out, when they're going to start producing stuff. Are they even going to bother to change their Facebook logo right now? Like,
right.
So that's kind of like one of the ones where I'm like super excited about it coming out, but I have no idea when it's actually going to drop. Whereas we just worked with Leach Camper Sales here. We haven't really even gotten into like putting out the campaign or any of that stuff, but in going through their stuff, I just had some suggestions about, hey, here's some things we could do to kind of realign or just rein in the branding situation you have right now, which is kind of all over the board. How can we refine that a little bit, make it more unified? You know, let's get some colors. Let's make sure these fonts are all just organized, right? I mean, they just needed some consistency in their brand approach. So I'm really excited about that coming out too, and they're super stoked on it as well. And they also have budget and they're motivated. So I'm really excited about that. I try to serve the client. So like if the client wants something I don't particularly like, that's what they want. So I'm going to help them in the best way that I can. On those two clients, like it was what I suggested and what I think was the right thing to do. And they both said, yes, let's do that. So I see those both as a real win, and I'm, excited about that. So I was telling a friend of mine, I sent him I can't remember what I sent him, a photo of something or a video clip or something like that. And he was like, that is really rad. I said, the bad news is that it wasn't approved. Like maybe 10% of the stuff that I actually do gets approved and ever gets seen in the world. And I think that is something that especially beginning designers don't know about. Mm-hmm. Like the majority of the work that you do, no one will ever see. Yeah. And that can be really frustrating, especially early in the career. If you haven't had the right kind of education or mentoring. But even now, I'm like, God, so much stuff is just left on the cutting room floor that I thought it was good enough to show the client. Like it must have been good enough to show somebody else too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And all the work that went into it, all the thought that went in behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
We have some of that in our office too, where we do some cool stuff. Sure. We have an opportunity to do some cool stuff, and then it never gets past the point where it can actually see the light of day. So how are you able to kind of more or less deal with that? Do you just get over and just accept it? That's the way that it is, or are there avenues to where you can share some of that out and just be like, hey, this was something that wasn't approved, but I want to share it with you all anyway? Is there any way to do that?
I'm sure that there is. I just generally don't. I'm at the point where it doesn't come out or it doesn't get approved or it falls apart. Like I just at that point, I'm already thinking about the next thing
Mhm.
I'm already working on the next thing anyway. Especially by the time, like a lot of the life cycles for projects, by the time it actually gets to print or gets the website goes live or whatever, like I've already been thinking about other things for weeks by that point. So like, uh, and I don't generally show stuff that I'm working on. Like, I don't know. I've never been that guy to be
Yeah.
like, oh, check this out. Oh, the client didn't approve this. Blah. Um, I save that stuff in case, for whatever reason, I ever need to show it to somebody, but I don't publicize that. I mean, I don't self promote myself hardly at all to begin with, let alone stuff that's not getting produced.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just never been a part of my personality to do that. Like, I definitely want to share the stuff that I do get approved and get out in the world, but even then, I have a hard time keeping up. Just documenting what's like, I don't think I've updated my personal portfolio since I got hired at Molly Marketing, and the only reason I would do it again was if I wanted to try and get a different job. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm one of those type of designers. I'm not like constantly self promoting myself along the way. Um, and I probably should. I mean, that would be a service to the clients to do more of that, but I
But
don't
you're
know.
busy working
I mean,
on
the
other
heartbreak,
people's stuff.
like you were saying, like, how do you deal with that? Like when you get shot down or whatever. It's just, I don't know. I've been doing this for so long that my ego and my work are so far apart that there's no heartbreak. I do get disappointed, but it's not like a big deal.
That is a good lesson for young people to know. I mean, in any line of work that you're in, really. I mean, you kind of have
Oh, sure.
to separate yourself from it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understand
And
that
it's
if
hard too because you are putting so much of your time and your creativity and you're really putting heart and putting yourself into it. You have to be separated at the same time because you're like, this, this, whatever I'm doing right now has a 10% chance of living,
yeah,
let's say.
yeah.
So you can't really be too invested in any one particular thing. Um, Young people, listen.
And the other side of it too is when people are trying to give you feedback, hopefully they're doing it in a respectful way and it's not like, oh, this sucks. It's, hey, what if you tried this? And I think some young people today, when they hear that, they think that they're being personally attacked and they're being told that their work isn't good enough. And then they're not good enough as a person because their
Oh, sure.
work isn't good enough. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to separate the self from the work. And
yeah,
understand that people are out there to help. They're not out there to shoot you down and to knock you down. They're there to help you throughout your process and being
yeah,
able to create things. You know, you're gonna have to learn to have some rough skin going into it.
yeah. And also, I think just that kind of levity or whatever of of like you said, understanding that like I I work with two younger designers who are both very talented, but they're green in their career. So like working with them, one of them is really a lot easier to work with and accepts like I could just shit on her stuff all day and she would be okay with it. And the other one is a lot more cautious about asking for feedback and whatever. So I kind of have to deal with them a little bit differently. But that doesn't mean that I have to say different things about what they need to improve on. It just means that I need to like couch that conversation a little bit differently. Like I can be a little bit more critical with the one and say like, well, why didn't you do this? Or like, you should know better than that or whatever. And the other one I have to be like, oh, well, you know what you should do is you should do this rule or you should try this idea. Um, and a big part of that was just kind of like I didn't automatically know how to do that. Like I learned how to talk to people when I was teaching at UNL and SEC to manage different personality types a
Yeah.
little bit. I wouldn't say that I'm great at it, but just having those experiences really exposed me to different levels of fragility, I guess I would say. Like there are some really talented people who are very bullheaded and will not change what they're doing. Even when you give them very explicit, change this, change this, change this, change this, they might change one thing. And you're like, dude, I told you to change 5 things. Change these 5 things. And you have other people who you say, change these 5 things, and they will just change everything about the entire project. They will scrap the project and start from scratch. It's like, no, dude, I didn't tell you to do that. I told you to change these 5 little details. So it's, it can be tricky. It was much more tricky when I had 20 people at a time I was talking to. Now I have the 2, and that's much more manageable.
I bet.
But I really look at it as really like a fun and good situation to be in. Mm-hmm. Like I like working with people, and I like to be able to help them develop, and I like to be able to suggest things. And even when they ask me about a problem where like maybe it's like a weird thing in Photoshop or After Effects or something, where they're like, why does this, what is going wrong? And I'm like, I haven't thought of that in a long time. What is going wrong? Oh yeah, it's this weird little detail that I haven't thought about in 5 years, but I've been through that before because it's just one of those things that people will go through. There was a time when programs had books, and you would get the book and you would read the book, and then you would know, oh yeah, there's all these different things that you can do. Now there's no fucking books. So like, you give somebody Photoshop, they're like, oh, I have Photoshop. Like, I guess I'm gonna like look on YouTube to see what that is. Like, there's no fucking books anymore. So yeah, it must be a much different. But at the same rate, like I've been using Photoshop since like 1998 or something, 97, 6, something like that. Like, yeah, maybe I read a book back then, but I certainly haven't kept up with any of the changes they've been doing for the past 20 something years. Like, right. I know that they add all these cool new tools all the time, every time they upgrade, and I'm like, yeah, fuck that. I don't need that. I'm sure I do though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just fucking old.
Well, that's what Google's for, Ben.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what YouTube is for. And that's why like 13-year-old Russian kids who put up YouTube videos on how to do stuff, they are the best. I love them. They're like, oh, what you do is you go like this, and then you go like this, and then you do this. And they do it super fast, and they don't tell you how to do it. But if you can like slow down and see what they're doing, you can be like, oh yeah, that's genius. That's great. Not a very good tutorial, but now I know how to do it, you know?
Speaking of YouTube and Google, how much of that did you do while you guys were remodeling your house?
Oh shit! Every single thing that we did, literally every single thing that we did was either we knew somebody who had already done it, one of our friends who had like helped somebody put up drywall before, or put in a wood floor, or done whatever random thing, and or a lot of YouTube, and or just doing the same thing 2 or 3 times to get it right. There are many things in this house that have been done 3 times, for better or for worse. And, if I had to do it all again, I might do certain things a little bit differently. But, we moved into this house. We didn't expect to move here. We decided to make some renovations, and then it just kind of snowballed into like, well, if we're going to start doing some renovations, we might as well just renovate everything because we're never going to do it again. And that's probably not the best way to plan for a complete like first floor remodel, but we made it through, and like I said, I do some things differently. The main thing that I would probably source out next time would be drywall. Not because hanging it is that bad, but because mudding it is so frustrating. Like just getting it smooth, not having any bubbles, not having to do it 15 times in a row and sanding it all the time. So there's like just dust literally everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
That would be the one that I would hire out from now on. The other stuff I'm kind of into. Like I like doing like wood, I like cutting stuff and building stuff, and I like putting stuff together, and I like doing tile. Uh, and I don't mind doing finishing work. It's just the drywall stuff. I don't like that.
Yeah.
We have a friend who is an electrician, and so he came over and did a few of the more dangerous things that we needed to have done.
Smart move. Smart move.
But he explained to me like very lucidly, like how do these kind of light switches work? How do these kind of things work? How do they work in tandem? Where you have like two light switches that control the same light, or three light switches that control the same light. Um, and he kind of taught me not to be as afraid of electricity as I was. So like I've done all of the lights up here now, and I'm going to do a couple more things. And the reason that he instilled that kind of like lack or not, I guess I have respect for electricity, but I'm not as fearful of it, was because one day we were chatting. He was installing some wire into our box, and he just took out his clips and clipped into a live wire, and it just popped like it was a giant explosion of electricity. It kind of like melted his wire cutter a little bit, and he didn't have gloves on. It just like made a loud popping noise, and he was like, "Oh shit, I should have known that was on." That was the extent of it. Like he didn't get electrocuted, nothing burned down.
Thank God.
And from that point on, I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess like it's not that. I guess it's not that big of a deal." Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to be as afraid as I was. So now, like, if I need to swap out a light switch or a outlet or something like that, I'll just go ahead and turn the power off and do it, and turn it back on. It seems to always work. So.
Well, it's one of those things where you're afraid of something until you see it actually happen, right?
Yeah.
Same concept. Yeah. So speaking of the house, you know, we were working together at the time when you guys bought the house and started working.
Uh-huh.
You said that you wanted to change one thing that led to the next thing. It was a snowball effect. But what was what was the thought pattern behind that? Was it just like, let's just fucking do it now and be done and not have to worry about it again? Or was it one of those things where, you know, you started doing it, you're like, well, shit, you know, we're kind of in the middle of it now. We need to just do it. But it kind of changed a lot of things in your house, right? Not only were you given the first floor a whole makeover, but that changed your guys' living arrangements for a year plus.
Oh, yeah.
So how are you guys able to kind of balance that aspect of it, of not having, I guess, normal house life, if you could call it normal? Walk me through that.
We started out in the basement because the floors in the bedrooms and hallway were existing wood floors, but we needed to resurface those before we refinish those before we moved in. So that took I don't know, 2 months or something like that. So we were living in the basement for those 2 months, and then we moved upstairs. And you know, during that time, we'd already kind of decided some of the things we were going to change up here. Like we took out the wood paneling on the wall, and we took out this built-in thingy, and started like kind of making some changes. And we thought that we were going to put in the wood floors to match. We weren't 100% sure, and then we decided, if we're going to do wood floors, we're going to do them now, because we'll never do them if we move in up here. So we started tearing up the floors. And when we were getting into the kitchen, we started having this discussion about like, okay, so how do we want to change the kitchen? You know, do I just want to, like, it was all like dark wood and like laminate counters and cabinets and a soffit. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to move the stove over here, and we're going to move the fridge over here, and we just kind of want to rearrange things and then paint them. And then it just got to the point where I was like, well, if we're going to do all this work anyway, why don't we just make it the way we want it to be long term? Or like, what's your dream kitchen like? You know, why don't we just do that now? Which may or may not have been the best decision, but I mean, we have a cool kitchen now, so.
Oh man, your guys' kitchen is amazing. It's magazine worthy, man. You got the white tile on the backsplash. You got the nice appliances. You got your little terrariums with the little with little succulents in there. Oh man, it's just beautiful.
Magazine worthy. I like that. That's nice. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
It is really nice. But like you said, like, how did this change our like normal day-to-day lives? Like, the only way that we could have done this is to not have kids, to be honest. Like, if we had kids, there would have been no way that we could have taken this on, because even just doing the floor, there were times where certain sections of the floor were just open to the joists. Like, there was no subfloor, there was no carpet, like there was nothing there except for joists. So like, even the dog was sort of quarantined to certain areas at times. Just like, I didn't think she was going to fall through the floor, but like, she could get hurt, or there'd be a million nails everywhere, or all sorts of different things that we worked through. After we moved upstairs, things maybe got a little bit easier for a while because we still had a functional kitchen. But once we started tearing the kitchen apart and moving the wood floors in, it got to the point where, like, we had taken every cabinet out of the kitchen. The only thing that was still standing was the stove. We didn't even have a sink in the kitchen. And then once we got to the point where we had to move the stove out, then we actually moved the refrigerator downstairs. We still had the stove until a certain point where we had to move the stove out onto the porch, and then it was no longer accessible. So like, we really, for like I think for maybe like 6 months, we had our microwave and our fridge downstairs, and that was our kitchen. And we used our like a utility sink in the basement as like our sink. Like, it was pretty bad there for a while, because like, when you don't have a stove, you really can't cook. Like, there are very few things that go well in the microwave. Not even mac and cheese goes well in the microwave. Like, you're either getting takeout or eating somewhere else, or having like a peanut butter sandwich. Right. And that's kind of all there was there for a while. As the kitchen got to the point where it was functional again, things kind of slowed down as far as like prioritizing doing a bunch of work on weekdays, because we would be doing like, go to work, come home, do like 3 or 4 hours worth of work, go to sleep, do the same thing every single day, until the point where the kitchen was back operational. And then it was kind of like, well, shit works, I guess we don't have to really bust our ass so much anymore, like, we can, like, everything now is just cosmetic, and cosmetic can wait, and so things really slowed down at that point, where I don't think we did very much work for maybe 3 or 4 months. We might do a couple of hours of work on the weekends, but we were so burned out by that point that we just were like, whatever, the shit works. We don't have to worry about how it looks right now. Until we kind of got fed up with the fact that things were not looking that great, and there were still tools everywhere, and just general chaos. So we really did a big push at the end of last year in December to get things wrapped up. And at this point, we have like 2 or 3 little details to take care of, but we're pretty much done. And that was like a 2.5 year process, I suppose.
At least 2 years, yeah.
And yeah, we never like killed each other during that time, or like really had any major. We definitely got annoyed. There was definitely stress involved, but a lot of people we would talk to would say stuff like, a lot of people get divorced when they do a renovation on like one room.
You guys are doing a whole house. How did that work?
Right.
No,
but cool. When we bought this place, we'd already been married for like 11 years. Like, we have a certain comfort level and trust and respect for each other that even if I'm not 100% on board with whatever crazy idea she has, or reverse, like, we're like, whatever, like, it's going to pan out,
Yeah. You have that level of trust, and also you can only push back so many times on things, whereas you just kind of have to be like, yep, all right, that works for me. I don't have a strong enough opinion to fight you on this or push back on this, so let's just roll with it.
I'm like I said before, like, I'm kind of like a, not stuck in my way, but they're like, I have systems that work for me. you know? And when somebody tries to change my system, I'm automatically going to be like, no, don't change the system until I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I think through it, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really matter. Why wouldn't I want that cool thing to happen in my life, you know? Like, but, you know, people are resistant to change and we're fearful of change or whatever. And I know that about myself. So I just have to take a minute or two and be like, yeah, if that thing was different, would that really matter that much to me? No, it wouldn't. Like, let's move on, you know?
I get excited when I do like really small shit around the house. I think
Uh-huh.
I told you last time I was over at your guys' house, I hung a wine rack and I felt super proud. And we hung our own curtains and those sorts of things. Like you feel a
Mhm.
real big sense of pride in that. And those are just minuscule things. You
Oh,
guys
sure.
redid your entire fucking house. What kind
Right.
of feelings like were you more relieved than anything like oh my god this is over or were you just like hey this is a work in progress what's kind of your feeling about it?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer that. I do feel really proud of the work that we've done. I feel really like a, a big sense of accomplishment. Part of me feels kind of just like, because we're still not 100% done, I'm
Right.
still kind of like, well, it's not done, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're
I don't
satisfied
know.
you're satisfied for now but there's more work to be done is what I'm
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing.
yeah, yeah. And there's things that, like, if I look closely, there's things that I would still change just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely am not gonna because, like, I don't have the time or the energy or, like, I don't want to redo something again or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel really good about it. And we're at the point now where everything's livable, everything's presentable. We can have people over and not be like, oh, don't step on that stapler or whatever. Uh, and that feels really good. Uh, the biggest thing at this point is that we've used our garage as like our main storage area and or work area and or staging area for almost all 100% of the stuff that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still just a clusterfuck of stuff all over the place that is not organized, is not useful in any way, and I'm just really ready to clean that shit out and make the garage what it ought to be. And had we had the foresight prior to moving in, the smartest thing we would have done was just put up shelves. If
Yeah.
we had just put up shelves in the garage, 90% of my concern about what's going on right now would be gone. But we didn't, so
The garage is like the biggest catch-all in a house.
oh
It's
yeah,
first number one is closet. You're just gonna throw shit in a closet. Number two is
mm-hmm.
the garage. Like, oh, I'll just set it in the garage for now. I'll deal with that later until
Yeah,
you can't use your garage anymore. And then it's like, oh,
yeah,
what the fuck?
yeah. And I actually have done a couple of, I call them rage cleaning events,
Yep.
where I just get so fed up that I'm just like, fuck.
Uh huh.
I'm just gonna drink a bunch of caffeine and I'm gonna destroy this problem. And that's worked on a couple of occasions, but it was always a band-aid solution. Each time I did it, it was just a band-aid. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, all right, we need a permanent situation.
Yeah.
And that's coming up. As soon as it gets predictably nice outside for 2 or 3 days in a row, that's what's going to happen.
I like your optimism that that's going to happen in Nebraska. It's the middle of
Well,
April and it's just decided
it
to
has
snowstorm today.
it has to happen. Or
Oh,
just even like one day where I'm like, uh, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna opt out of every other thing that I've committed to on this day, whatever that might be, and I'm just gonna take care of this shit, and then I'll feel better.
yep.
I just need like 8 to 10, 12 hours to like really nail it down.
Yeah. You got to do that sometimes. I get wild hairs all the time. Like I'll start to do one thing. Maybe it's working in my closet or something and organizing clothes or making a donation pile or whatever. Three
Sure.
hours later, I'm still working on that shit just because one thing it just snowballs after
Oh,
each
sure.
other.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, once you get into that mindset, you're like, oh, also, this other room also needs some TLC.
Yeah.
Oh, and also this other thing that I hid from myself 2 years ago. Now I need to address that.
So after kind of going through all that with your house and kind of redoing literally everything, what would your advice be to somebody who's starting to think about uh, going into a house project? What are some of the things that people need to kind of think about?
That's an interesting question. The first thing I would recommend would be to there's almost like two. Okay, so if you're looking to renovate a house that you're already living in, figure out ways to live without that space for a lot longer than you think you're going to live in that space.
Fair point.
Like twice as long as you think it's going to take. Because it'll probably take 3 times as long. But if you're prepared for twice as long, you can do 3 times as long.
Yep.
Uh, the other thing would be just to buy quality tools. One of my biggest regrets was that I didn't buy a better um, chop saw or angle saw, whatever that thing's called.
Mm-hmm.
Because mine like doesn't really have a true 45-degree angle. Like it's somewhere between 44.3 and 44.7. But like they just never match up, no matter what I do.
Oh, no.
So buy quality tools, and if you have, just reach out to people. Like if you have friends who've done stuff, or if you have friends who work in any of the trades, reach out and talk to them because our, like I said before, like our friend Jake helped us out with our electrical. Our friend Davey helped us out with our floors. Our friend Nate helped us out with advice about drywall. Danny helped us out with our plumbing questions. And then, of course, YouTube. But
Right.
for real, get other people involved. Like people like to help out and do fun, weird projects. Like most of the people who helped us out with our projects had never dealt with a air pressure powered tool before, and like neither had we to a certain point. Like I'd used it to like fill up our car tires and stuff like that, but I'd never used a nail gun. Or people like to help out, so just ask people for help, even if it just is like, hey, can you paint that thing? And then they do it and they do a shitty job and you have to do it again, but at least they kind of have fun, and like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's an activity you can do together with your friends. Drink a
Yeah.
couple beers, have some pizza, make a
Yeah,
fun
exactly.
time of it.
And the number one thing is demolition is super fun. So get a lot of people involved with that. Like if you can hand somebody a sledgehammer and be like, yo, can you tear that thing down? They will do that for free all day. Because destroying shit is super fun.
Is it like what they show on TV on those HGTV shows where people just taking sledgehammers to shit and just having a blast?
Oh yeah. I mean, you've seen Office Space, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's like that.
Get your baseball bats and
Yeah.
printers and
Actually, that would be my advice. If you want to go into any kind of like construction or reconstruction or whatever, just go into the demo side because demo is fun. Rebuilding shit is tedious. It's like always about like perfection. It's always about like making things really nice and pretty and stuff like that. But if you can get into just straight up demo, man, that would be like a blast.
I bet
We
so.
bought this thing called the Honey Badger. It's a demolition rake. This is like a 4-foot long rake, and the end of it is like 4 or 5 wedges, and you just like slam it into anything and pry it up.
Oh my gosh.
Anything. You can destroy anything with a honey badger. It does not give a fuck. Best tool in the world. So like all the like flooring and stuff like that, That's how you like get it up. You just like slam that thing underneath like a sheet of subfloor and just
Yeah.
crank it, pull it up, crank it and pull it up.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Probably.
So, as much as like the renovation process is like boring and time consuming and stuff like that, like the destroying part of it is awesome. The other part is not as awesome.
But the destroying part only takes like what, an hour or two, and then literally the rest of the time is making it look nice.
Mm, true. Yeah. The funny thing about this house is that a lot of the, I'm not even sure how this house was built because a lot of the nails that were in the kitchen and in the built-ins were they were like rifled. They were like twisty nails, which I'd never seen before. So like I assume when I hammered them in, they just like screwed themselves into the wood. But then you can't pull those things out. There were so many nails in this place that it took a lot of
Oh my
work.
god, that sounds so tedious.
Yeah,
Oh.
thousands of nails. The wall behind me was this wood paneling, which normally you'd be like, oh, just take the wood paneling down. That'll be great. You can just patch up those drywall holes.
Yeah.
Wood paneling itself was only held up by like 15 nails, let's say, for the entire wall, which is great. We pulled it down. It was super easy. Underneath that, there was like 7,000 nail holes for whatever fucking reason.
God.
I have no idea. And the drywall itself was set not with screws, but with those like twisty nails.
Oh.
So apparently, in the 60s, that's what you did, I guess. I don't know. The twisty nails are they're not good.
Oh man. You got to beware
Super
of
secure.
twisty.
Like this house is built to like earthquake, tornado, apocalypse. I don't know. Like it's gonna be fine. Whether we're fine or not is a totally different story. The house is gonna stand though.
So we talked about a little bit about the creative process, your creative process, and what goes into that. We've talked a little bit about the house and what your process was for kind of creating that and how you're coming out of it. Is there
Sure.
anything else that you think people should know about kind of your journey so far or anything like that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, there is the beard, which was a personal project that I embarked on in 2018 because I didn't think I could grow a beard.
I see you got some good length on it. It's starting to get curly.
Certain parts of it grow really good, other parts don't. But whatever. I'm blessed. I convinced Rihanna that the best thing to do was to grow it out for a year because that's what I read online, and she went along with it, and I'm glad that she did. Because I really like it. Like I think I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not the world's greatest beard, and by now I wish it was like 2 feet long. Like I want like a wizard beard, but I'm never gonna get that. Like my face just can't produce that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with what I've got, and I'm glad. It makes me feel older. I've always felt like I had a really young-looking face, and so I don't know. Just having like some white whiskers like helps me be aged.
I know how you feel. I've been showing my wisdom for the last 4 or 5 years, and
Right.
there's a lot of gray in my beard too, man. It's people always make fun of it, but I'm like, look, it's just my wisdom showing through. I don't know what you want from me.
I think that's a good attitude.
Yeah.
And lately, I've been collecting like whenever a good like a nice one falls out, I've been collecting them because I've started. This is one of my conceptual art projects. Where I just like take a beard hair that's fallen out and I mount it to a piece of paper,
Okay. All right.
and then it's part of my beard hair series. And I sign it, and then I put it under glass, and then I haven't started sending these out to people, but people are going to very soon be getting gifts. It's just like one beard hair.
Is that the Ben Swift Christmas card?
Yeah, kind of. It's like a document it's like a specimen. It's like a piece of me that I've been working on for 2 years. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
like it fills a bunch of different categories, and it's also just straight up weird. So
that's okay.
um, I'm excited to start getting those out to people. When I put the first one down, like I was literally, it was like late at night. I was drinking, and I like one popped out, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I took it into the room. I put it on a piece of paper. I was like, "You know what? I could really. This is something." Got a piece of tape, put a piece of tape on it, and I like signed it, and I put it in a frame, and I hung it on the wall in my bathroom. And I was
Oh
like,
man.
"Yeah, this is something." I showed Rihanna, and she was like, "That's really, really beautiful." And so ever since then, I've been collecting and mounting these specimens.
What happens if you get a white hair though? How are you gonna put
Oh,
that on a
I
piece of
got some
paper?
black paper. I went to Hobby Lobby specifically because I was like, I need some different colors of paper because I don't have enough contrast with these white ones. And the cool thing is that some of them like change color. Like some of these long ones, like they'll start out white and then go to like this light brown color, get darker, and then spin around like this, and then at the very end, they're really dark right by the cuticle.
Yeah.
And like, I don't understand how that happens. Like, why did it start out white? Why did it change color? And why is it now like black, basically? It's weird.
I've never thought about that before. I've
Next
had
time you find, like, next time you pull one out, like, look at it, like, really carefully because, like, well, mine, like, I don't trim it because it doesn't grow fast enough to trim.
yeah.
So any of these ones that fall out naturally, they're like natural from the beginning to the end. So like it's like a baby hair all the way to the cuticle. And it's weird how they change over time. And like I was talking to my barber about it, or at
Yeah.
Straight Edge,
Yep.
and Randall was like, "Well, yeah, you have like three different types. You got like straight ones, you got curly ones, and you got like zigzag ones or whatever." And I think some of mine are just like in betweeners because they'll be like straight for a while and then change shape and then change again. It's really weird.
It's fun
I
though.
like
It's
it.
like I've heard beards be called like men's makeup before, and
Oh yeah,
when I started growing my beard, I was like 40 pounds heavier at least, and so my face was, my face was like a balloon. So it did. I mean, it did help a lot. Like it covered up my double chin and my double neck and all that. And
sure,
now I just like it. It just gives you that like stately presentation. You
right,
are a man. Not saying that
right,
men who don't have beards aren't men. Not saying that at all. But like there's like another level to your manliness that
sure.
people just can't understand unless they grow a beard.
Yeah, I feel the same way. But I also have a lot of beard envy for like even manlier beard. And really, my biggest complaint, well, like mine is kind of like sparse and like soft. I wish it was like thick. But my biggest complaint is like my mustache. Like I wish I could do like a Sam Elliott kind of thing,
Oh my
but I just
gosh.
I
Yeah.
just don't have like nobody has that probably. But mine is so like weak and it doesn't connect on either side.
Yeah.
It's like, but I can't take it off. That would look stupid.
Right. You kind of
So
you kind of have like that Captain. You kind of have like a Captain Morgan look to you, like how your chin is a little bit thick, a little bit longer. You got the
mhm,
mustache that goes around to the sides.
mhm.
Um, Plus, you got a beard that connects to your chin. I mean, Captain Morgan didn't have the beard necessarily, but I think you can pull it off. I like it. I think it fits. It's crazy
I don't know.
how people's facial hair grows differently. Like that's always kind of mesmerized me a little bit and stumped me. Like I just get curious like how do you how does your DNA know how to grow facial hair?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really weird. I don't know if that's a DNA thing. I'm not a
The
scientist
other
by any
thing,
means.
the other thing that I've been blessed with though is that like I have an awesome neckline. Like I never have to shave my neckline, which I think is amazing.
I'm kind of
Because I would
jealous.
hate to have to like get in here with like some clippers or whatever.
I always have to trim up. I can kind of trim up the sides of my neck and the sides of my beard a little bit easier. But then like now our barber is closed for I don't know how long, so I have to like trim it up myself. And my biggest fear
Right.
is I'm gonna mess something up, then I'm gonna have to shave everything off. That's like
Right.
that stuff keeps me up at night. Like, what's gonna happen if I ever have to shave my beard? Oh my god.
Are you still making beard oil? Because I need some more.
I can certainly make you some. I haven't really made a lot lately. I've been kind of distracted with the podcast, to be honest.
Oh, sure.
Sarah can attest to this, but I get really excited about things, and
Right.
then I get really excited about something else, and
Right.
it's tough. And so one of the things about this podcast was like I have to commit. Like this is the one thing that I can do that I can commit to. Like the beard oil is good, but that market is really really saturated. Plus,
Sure.
you have to buy inventory. You have to, there's a lot of costs behind it.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so it's one of those things where like it's there, it's proven, I can use it. But I think I'm going to keep that as a hobby level type situation, kind of like the podcast for now. The podcast is hobby level. If I know people are listening, which is amazing, and thank you for listening. But
Right.
it's not a Joe Rogan or armchair expert or nowhere near that level, and that's perfectly
Well,
fine.
if you put a decade into it, you might get there.
Yeah, right. I don't have a big name to trade on like those guys do, but
Eh,
I think we're doing something fun here. That's the important thing is that it's a lot of fun.
exactly. Yeah. And it's always good to hawk your own shit on the side, so you might as well get that beard oil going so you can do your
Yeah.
own commercials on the air the whole time.
Hey, by the way, we got some beard oil if you guys need some beard oil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like it. I like where you're going.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you hopping on with me tonight. This has been a lot of fun.
Totally.
I'm glad that we got to do it.
Thank you for having me. Have I been domesticated?
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
When my wife and I met, I was about as undomesticated as a person could possibly be. I didn't have a job. I hadn't had a job for like maybe a year, like a real job. I was doing temp work and like giving blood and stuff like that.
Oh shit.
And I lived in kind of like a punk rock crash pad with 3 other guys and a dog, and it was kind of a party house. And I was like showering once a week and like just a wild animal of some kind. And somehow, like I saw something in her, and she saw something in me, and she domesticated me.
I think that'd be an awesome next episode, man. I want to hear more about that. I think people will want to hear more about that too.
Remind me to tell you about the snake that lives in our silverware drawer.
Uh-oh.
A real thing.
Okay. All right. Is that like a real snake or is that just like a...
Yep.
Okay. All right. Next time we'll talk to Ben about the snake in the silverware drawer and how he became domesticated. Perfect. We're all ready to go. I like it.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks again
man.
for being on.
It was great to talk to you.